All right, everybody, let's get started here. Once again, my name is Matt Johnson. I am the Civic Engagement Associate at the National Congress of American Indians. Also on the phone, and I just unmuted her, is Sandra Mitrovich. Sandra, you would like to say hello?
Hello, everyone. I'm Sandra Mitrovich. I'm the Woman Man Killer Fellow here, working with the External Affairs team at NCAI and specifically working on Census and Native Vote. We're glad you're with us today.
Yes, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. So hopefully, let me just double check to make sure. Oh, I haven't shared my screen yet. There we go. Okay, good. Everybody can see that. So sorry about that. I forgot to share it before once we started. So we do have some guests with us, and Sandra, I'll let you go ahead and get us started here, and then we'll jump right into our presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you, Matt. So welcome again to our virtual National Roadshow series. We're going to be doing a series of touch points with folks regarding census operation. We'll be doing these via webinar rather than in person. And so we'll be moving about different regions of the country to highlight some of those areas and bring on different partners to talk about how they're going to be changing their strategy as it relates to their operations, and also where they're at, and also have an opportunity for people to do a roundtable on all of our series to make sure that they're sharing information in regards to the efforts in their own community, and then also gives us an opportunity at the end of these webinars to get together and talk about ways to increase our census participation, and maybe just some challenges that we're still facing, and ideas to create some solutions. Next slide. So next we have our GoToWebinar attendee. This is our interface that you're going to notice here. So those of you that are joining us, as Matt mentioned already, you're going to be muted. And so at the end, when we go into our roundtable discussion, he'll go through and unmute folks. And so here you'll notice on the interface that you are going to be able to collapse the screen if you would like. You can, by clicking on the orange arrow, you can open and close that control panel. You can also find information here about your audio connection. We recommend dialing in by phone. Actually, I'm on the phone, but my webinar interface is on the computer. It just limits the feedback. You'll also notice that you're going to get an access code along with your unique audio PIN. As we mentioned before, you're currently muted and in listen-only mode, and then we'll unmute that at the end. At each end of the presentations, we'll have a bit from NCAI at the beginning to walk us through some of the operational updates and the census form. But then when we go to introduce our partners that'll be on the call with us today, they'll have both an opportunity to answer any questions that you have at the end of each of their session, because we really want to make sure that we're getting to any of those questions. You can also enter those questions in the question pane, as Matt had highlighted there. And then as a reminder, the webinar is going to be recorded, and then you'll be receiving a link to the recording after. At this time, I want to make sure that we introduce Matt Johnson again, our Civic Engagement Associate, that's going to walk us through a bit on NCAI and the census operation.
Thank you so much, Sandra. So just a real quick recap. I know most of you probably know this by heart, but just in case for those who don't or are new to the call, the National Congress of American Indians was founded in 1944 and is the oldest, largest, and most representative American Indian and Alaska Native organization serving the broad interest of tribal governments and communities. Indian Country Counts is NCAI's initiative to encourage all American Indians and Alaska Natives to complete the 2020 census. For those who don't know, what is civic engagement? Civic engagement means working to make a difference in the civic life of one's community and developing the combination of knowledge, skills, values, and motivation to make that difference. It means promoting the quality of life in community through both political and non-political processes. The importance of the census, as I'm sure you all know, the census is a powerful information source that significantly influences U.S. policy. It is the foundation of American democracy, determining the allocation of congressional seats and redistricting of voting geographies. Nearly $1 billion in annual federal resources are allocated to Indian country based on census data. Now, nationally, the U.S. Census Bureau estimates that the American Indians and Alaska Natives living on reservations or in native villages were undercounted by approximately 4.9% in the 2010 census, more than double the undercount rate of the next closest population group. So what we want to do is obviously close that gap and try to bring that as close to zero as possible. So the census is here. Now what? I'm sure that's what most people are wondering, or at least now with everything happening now, what do we do? So mailings actually started going out starting on March 12th, inviting everyone to respond to the census. Now is the time to be shifting from educating your community on the census to preparing them to fill it out. Now, the self-response rate timeframe has been extended. Initially, it was only through the end of April, but now the new timeframe is now between March 12th and August 14th. On the left-hand side here, you can see this was the initial mailing schedule, but there's been an updated timeline, and we'll show you that. But this is what the initial mailing schedule is. I know that the reminder letters have already gone out as some people I know have already received that reminder letter to fill out the census form. I have received my census form. I know Sandra has, and hopefully some of you on the call here have also received it as well. So if you have, I would say go ahead and start filling that out. How you will be contacted. So here's a map of Washington State, and as you can see, there's a couple of different colors here determining what how you'll receive your first contact by the Census Bureau. I also made sure that the reservations and travel areas of the state were also highlighted on there, and you can see them written in there, and they're kind of a darker shade of the different areas. So if you see where you are, if you are in a purple region, that means that the first mailing you received was an invitation to fill out the census online only. If you're in the green areas, that means that you received an internet choice mailing where you received not only the invitation to fill it out online, but also received a paper form as well. If you're in those yellow areas, that was a hand-delivered packet, which means that you were hand-delivered it as opposed to it being sent in the mail. Now, unfortunately, with some of the changes in the census operations, those hand deliveries have been suspended at this point and won't resume until April 1st. But that doesn't mean that you can't fill out the census form in the meantime, and we'll go over that as we get through this. The online response portal. So this is what you see here is the letter that you receive if you're going to be responding online, and it is expected that most of the population will use the online response to fill out the form. I believe I saw a statistic recently that said about almost 16-17% of the households that were mailed this have responded to the census. The first mailing, as I said, is an invitation to fill out the census form and includes a census ID code, which you can see is in that blank spot on the photo there. Now, you don't need the census ID code in order to fill out your form, and which is why we encourage people to fill it out regardless of whether they get it or not. Now, this can pose a challenge for some AIN communities due to the lack of access to internet. However, it's not the only way to do that. As I mentioned, some received a paper form in the mail, which of course you can respond by mail, and you can also do it over the phone. Most people forget about the phone option, but that's actually a great way to do it, especially in these current times. Now, I'm going to throw this to Sandra, who's going to take us through the internet self-response kind of form, so that way you all can kind of just get a brief look at what the census form is going to look like. So, Sandra, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Thank you. So we're going to go through the self-response landing page just because we want to make sure, again, there's a visual look at the internet self-response. If you're on the call, we're just going to kind of hit some highlights on this page. And so if you have any questions regarding any of this, definitely put it in the chat box, or at the end when we roundtable, definitely ask us some questions. In terms of the landing page, this is what you'll see. It'll give you a brief welcome and, again, reiterate the importance of the census, and then also it's safe, secure, and confidential. It's going to ask you to get started with the questionnaire. It's going to tell you that if you leave the questionnaire and return later, you'll have to start all over, so just be aware of that. Right now, what we're hearing from folks is that the Chrome and Firefox are the best ways that these are being used, so please try to use those if you can as it relates to the latest version. Please log in. As Matt showed you, the materials that you received at your door, that were left at your door, you'll have a 12-digit census ID that you can put in those boxes there to log in. If you don't have a census ID, you can click on the link below. And so some people have asked that question. You don't have to necessarily have the ID to enter it. We're going to go through address verification. As part of the census, they're going to ask you to please verify your address, and they're going to list it there, and that's a yes or no. Then it's going to go to, for those without usual residence, and this is where you can actually put in an explanation of where you live. So for example, you'll put your city, state, zip code, and then you can put in a description, which would be something like the apartment over the gas station, the brick house with the screened porch on the northeast corner of Farm Road, and you could put like HC 46. Or something like a description of, for example, if you're experiencing houselessness, you can also put a description there. Including yourself, how many people will be living or staying in that address, and this is on April 1st. You're going to include that number in the box. We'll have some differentiation on the students that have been returned home from college, and we'll get to that slide a little bit later. What is your name and telephone number? You'll see that there. Just a reminder that the only reason why you would be contacted by the U.S. Census Bureau is for any kind of follow-up. Home ownership question is going to ask if it's owned by you or someone in the household, which would include a mortgage or loan. Owned by you or someone in the household free and clear, which would be without a mortgage or loan, rented, or occupied without payment of rent. These are both, they're just, we saved some space and put the questions on the same slide. It's sex, male or female, and then also then the date of birth, and then asking you to verify your correct age as of April 1. In terms of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin, you'll note there that there's no, not of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin, and then it has several other entries below that for yes, Mexican, Mexican-American, Chicano, yes, Puerto Rican, yes, Cuban, yes, another Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin, and then it also gives you the opportunity to put in another description such as Salvadoran, Colombian, Guatemalan, etc. When it gets to a race question, we have here, select one or more boxes and enter origins. As you'll note there, we have different ones along the left, but then as it relates to American Indian, Alaska Native, you also can put in your principal tribe that you would like to put in. You can put more than one. And so we're asking folks that, you know, you can either put your principal tribe that you're enrolled in or affiliated with. And so we want to make sure people know of that option. Final questions, it's going to bring you to this page to finally finish or go back and edit your questionnaire. Once your questionnaire is submitted, you will not be able to access your information or change any of your responses. After you submit your responses and are shown the confirmation page, you may close the web browser. We're asking people to please print the page, or if you can't print the page and you have a phone that's capable to take photos, take a photo of the page just so that you note your confirmation number and that you did, in fact, complete the census.
All right. Thank you, Sandra. Appreciate that. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the census is going to be sending out mailings basically from now until the end of April, and probably maybe even after that point, obviously with the changes of things. But this is what we're going off of with the most recent information we have. So they'll be sending out reminder letters and postcards throughout the self-response timeframe should you not respond. And depending on your location, you may receive a paper form in the first invitation. And all households will be sent a paper form if they do not receive a response by early April. Right here is one of the reminder postcards on the right-hand side. As you can see, the date is April 20th. The next page here has got two photos. First is a reminder postcard. Before on the left-hand side, it's the end of March, and then on this letter is obviously on April, dated April 8th. That's where would come with the paper form if you had not responded by then. So timeline updates. As I mentioned, there has been some updates on things. basically due to the COVID-19 virus. And we have a nice screenshot here of what it is on the left-hand side. I'm just going to read off some of the important stuff as it relates to travel information. So I mentioned that update leave, if you live in any of those yellow marked places, not only in Washington but across the country, they've been delayed because the field operations have stopped. And so they're supposed to resume on March 29th or the beginning of April, I think April 1st, so basically that March 29th, April 1st date. Updated enumerate has been suspended and it's been extended through May 14th. And then the mobile questionnaire assistance has been delayed and is supposed to be, again, is on hold until April 13th. Obviously, these are all subject to change. As of right now, we are working in a time frame of a wait and see, if you will. We're constantly trying to get the most updated information out there to everybody, but and this is what we have so far. Hopefully in the time we're talking here, we don't get new information, but obviously if that happens, we'll make sure to get that out to you. So some frequently asked questions on the virus. This is from the official statement from the Census Bureau on it. I'm not going to read the whole thing, and you can find that online. But the most important thing to take away from it, it's in bold at the bottom. It says it has never been easier to respond on your own, whether online, over the phone, or by mail, all without having to meet a census taker. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that we can try to push, especially in this time frame where travel is limited, the field operations are kind of in flux, and so it's going to fall on individuals and community members like yourself who are on this call to really help to push that folks to reply online or over the phone, or if they do have a mailer, a paper form, I should say, to send it by mail. I should also state that as of right now, there is nothing that says that the Census Bureau, you can print it online and get it, print it off at home and send it out. So as I mentioned, there's going to be delay in the question assistance program as well as the early non-response follow-up operation, which as you can see right here, the dates that they have as of right now. And then this was a slide that's just saying that they had suspended the field operations. So again, encouraging folks to please respond online, trying to help their family and friends complete that as well. We talked about college students. So real quick on college students. So normally, where the student is living at the time of the census, April 1st, is where they are counted. So if they are living at home and commuting to school, they're counted at the home they're living in. If they're living on on-campus housing or off-campus housing near their university, that's where they're counted as. Now, with most universities closed, and obviously these students now back at home, they are still expected to be counted at the school or where they were on April 1st, assuming things had been, normal and there hadn't been this virus and outbreak. So if you're at home, you have a son or daughter who is back from college because of the school is closed, you should not be counting them at that home, I should say, because they would normally be off at school or living either on campus housing or off campus housing. And so they should not be counted, and that will fall on the university to count that if they're living on on-campus housing. If they're off-campus housing, then they are responsible to fill out that form. Obviously, they're not at school right now, so that'll be something they'll have to do later on. For incarcerated American Indians, everyone is counted where they are jailed, regardless of where they had lived prior to their incarceration. Depending on the facility, the prison administration or the prisoners themselves are responsible for filling out the form. However, in light of everything that's happening with COVID-19, the Census Bureau has been working with prison administrators to kind of ensure that they're taking the necessary precautions. So maybe some, and again, it depends on the prison how they were going to be counted in the first place. But a lot of the administrators are going to be kind of taking over that process. And just so you know, for some states have passed laws requiring prisoners to be counted at their home addresses when drawing local legislative districts, but the Census Bureau is not going to assist in any recalculation, and those local laws do not affect federal congressional districts. The tracking the response rate. So the Census Bureau has made available a real-time map tracking the response rate. While there'll be some lag, it'll be the best glimpse into how your community is responding to the census. The map's already available at the web browser below, And I've already went and checked on it today. It looks like just about every state has at least hit that 15% threshold, with the exception, I think, of Alaska and Montana. You can actually, and you can see on the picture here, there's a tribal area. You can click on that and take a look. Unfortunately, because of the field operation suspension, a lot of the tribal track lands that you see on there will probably say 0%, but that's still plenty of time. We're only about 4 days in of information on that because it started on March 20th, and it's a great way to keep your community motivated and keep track of your response rates. So the time for talk is over. Now is the time for action. With the self-response being already begun, you got to think of ways to lead by example to show others in your community how easy the census is to complete. And while you don't have to have an official role, you can be a great ally or advocate in your community because you know the people best in your community, and you can be a good liaison for census officials, especially in this time where there's a lot of uncertainty. As I mentioned, unlike elections where it only occurs on one day, the self-response time frame is now over 2 months long, as you can tell from our information here. And so you don't have to limit yourself to how many times you talk about it or encourage people to fill out the form. Creating plans in your community to help those who may have difficulty filling out the form or might be experiencing homelessness or just have difficulty in general is a great way to help the system. And again, calling, texting, emailing to encourage your community to complete their census is a great way to, again, keep that social distancing without endangering your health. So with that, that's going to bring us to our first presenter. And let me just make sure I've got the control panel open here. So Wyatt, if you are muted, I would ask you to please unmute yourself. Wyatt Pickner is from the Urban Indian Health Institute. And Sandra, I don't know if you have any more of a greater intro for him, but I just know that he is our speaker from the Urban Indian Health Institute.
Wyatt, thank you so much for joining us. I just wanted to reiterate that Matt and I had talked about, you know your communities best, and we have great partners on the call with us today to really talk about the other campaigns that are going on to ensure all of our communities count. And so Wyatt's going to do that for us with the Urban Indian Health Institute from Seattle, Washington. Thank you for joining us, Wyatt. Take it away.
Yes, thank you both to you. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, again, my name's Wyatt Pickner. I am Hunkpatsi, Dakota, originally from South Dakota, but currently living and working here in Seattle at the Urban Indian Health Institute. And I am a program manager that is leading the census campaign that we have here. And so this project and our funding comes from the National Urban Indian Family Coalition, who we'll be hearing from next, I believe. And so we're working on a national level to coordinate some efforts here to talk about, and I'm going to provide some information about the campaign that we're doing. So next slide, please. So the Urban Indian Health Institute, if you're not familiar, we're a division of the Seattle Indian Health Board, and we serve as one of the 12 tribal epidemiology centers in the country. We're unique in that we serve urban American Indian Alaska Native communities, and we have a network of 62 organizations of urban Indian health programs and social and health service organizations and programs that we provide services to. And so primarily we do research and evaluation. You know, a lot of the work that we do is focused on health priorities and topics, looking to build public health infrastructure, do disease surveillance and prevention, as well as developing health promotion programming, all from an Indigenous perspective and with Indigenous methodologies. Next slide, please. And so in thinking about that, part of what we're doing is to develop this campaign. A lot of the work that we do here, we use census data. And so we recognize the importance of making sure that Native people are accurately counted in the census as it reflects in a lot of the information and reporting that we put out. And so we've been tasked with developing a campaign that can be communicated through our network as a Tribal Epidemiology Center, as part of the work we do at the Seattle Indian Health Board, and working with the urban Indian health programs in our network. And so we came up with the campaign, which we titled We Count. And so this is our kind of primary graphic and tagline that we're using. I carried the and actually where stories is, we have a blank there because we recognize that there's a lot of different ways that that can be filled in, and are using that throughout the campaign. But I carry the blank of my ancestors. I am here, I will be counted. And then we also have listed on here the website that is kind of the hub and for all of our information and resources and tools that we currently have available. Next slide. So again, the primary focus of our campaign is to promote the 2020 census. Again, because our organization or our institution primarily serves urban communities and populations, we're really tailoring a lot of the information and materials for those for that group of people, but we also recognize that a lot of the information can also be used more generally as well for other Native communities. Next slide, please. So I'll also say that, like, in working with that network, we're providing subcontracts with them to help us promote this campaign in those clinics and programs. And so we're developing some, this is some examples of the information and that we're putting out. The first one being a flyer on the importance. So towards the bottom of that, you can kind of see that there's the easy, safe, and impactful language that comes from the census, and so we're trying to tailor some of that language. And so this is the importance flyer that we have. We're also going to be putting out a flyer about how easy it is and simple to take the census, and then also something specifically about how the safety of it. Again, the middle graphic being our kind of primary I guess, lead graphic with our tagline on there, and just some examples of social graphics that are being put out. Next slide, please. And then here's a wider range of some of the information and tools that we're using. So in the upper left-hand corner, you can see that we have a blank template where you can fill in the blank and kind of tailor that to be, whatever you need it to be or want it to be, and some examples of how some of our staff here have filled that in. We also use this, we have a sovereign soup mix that we put out, and we've created a new recipe card for that and filled in the blank to be food. So I carry the foods of my ancestors and working with that in different ways. There is, so some of these are just showing you the array of resources and information that we're putting out. So some of these are social media graphics, some of them are posters, and some of them are just the pictures of what's being posted on social media and our website. Next slide, please. So that just kind of, we wanted to provide some general information about the materials that we've developed and where you can find some information. I'm happy to answer any questions about the campaign that we're doing or how we're kind of implementing this strategy with our organizations. I'll also say that, like, we've found it challenging because one of the requirements of the grant was to provide in-person interactions with our communities on promoting this, and so we're adapting that now and figuring out how we can work around that and continue to promote this information through other venues.
Thank you, Wyatt. Appreciate all of your information there. If anybody has a question, feel free to put it in the chat. If you're on the phone, if you want to raise your hand, if you're obviously on the online person, I know there's a number of people here who, I don't want to take everyone off mute just in case, but if there's any questions you have, feel free to speak now. If not, obviously we'll move on to our next presenter, but just want to give the opportunity for folks to either write something in the chat or write a question, and I'll just hold for a minute here before we move on to the next presenter. All right, seeing everybody's really shy today, I guess. So thank you, Wyatt. We really appreciate that information, and we'll move on to our next slide. And again, just to thank you so much for joining us today. All right, now next we have Rio Fernandez. He's with the National Urban Indian Family Coalition. Rio, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, well, I'll let you take it from here and obviously introduce yourself, and just feel free to say next slide, and I'll move you on to the next one.
Great, will do. So, hello, everyone. My name is Rio Fernandez. I'm Lower Elwha Clallam. I live up here in Seattle as well, and I am with the National Urban Indian Family Coalition. We were started in 2003. We are a C3 nonprofit with the goal of elevating a national voice that sustains Indigenous values and culture through a strong network of urban Indian organizations. Essentially, we work with urban Indian organizations around the country, community resource centers, health centers, alternative schools, whatever you can think of that's set up in an urban area that's meant to help with the strength and prosperity of our people. We work with and try to organize, get them resources and stuff like that. So we obviously had committed a lot of time and resources into the census, into our census strategy, and are now seeing a lot of that need to change. So really quickly, next slide, if you will. What's changed? So as we went over a little bit earlier, the Census Bureau has changed a lot of timelines, suspending field operations until April 1st. Census takers will be visiting in late May now instead of early May to follow up with non-respondents. SelfResponse has been extended, hand delivery of census packets on pause until April 1st at the earliest, and then group quarters and service-based enumeration delayed until late April. That one is also really important because that's particularly around counting the homeless population, which our community is an outsized portion of. So that is another thing so this is just to say that a lot of stuff has changed really quickly with the census in response to this, pandemic, and we are working to figure out as well. So in regards to that, next slide, please. The NUIFC, prior to all of this, a lot of our plan, and our plan still remains, to really work with our centers and put them in positions to succeed and put them in positions to reach out to their community and best message to their community about the importance of the census. A lot of what we had planned, though, was events, was a lot of community engagement, was a lot of door-to-door work, was a lot of, finding trusted messengers and empowering them to go physically meet people, to being at powwows, to being at gatherings, to being present at the health centers, at the community center, to connect with people there about the census. We are obviously now needing to change a lot of that, especially since such a big plank of our plan was the event stuff. So the NUIC's plans, our adaptive plans, are to double down on digital/remote census messaging. The Census Bureau has been pushing this message out, and I think it is really, really a good one, which is that it's never been easier to complete the census on your own, online, over phone, or by the mail. So our goal, and when we speak with our centers and when we're working with our centers, is to really push that message that we can complete the census online, that the census can be done on our own time, and that as we are all social distancing, as we are all in our homes, that this is a good opportunity to spend 10 minutes to make sure that you do that census. We're going to also really, really focus, expand on the promotion of our census messaging on social media, television, and the internet broadly. And we're also now thinking about ways that we can organize that weren't traditional. So we're looking into phone banking, digital trainings, targeted Facebook ads, text message banking as well, and some other ideas. And we'd love to hear anything that anyone else has. We are still, like I'm sure a lot of you guys, trying to figure out the best way to deal with this and try to figure out the best way to keep going. So we are excited about this conversation. So if you could, next slide. So the main thing that we're going to be focusing on is digital/remote messaging. And this is with the census being able to be completed online, on the phone, and by mail. It's important that we maximize our messaging around this. This is a quote from the census website itself, which I think is really, really good, which is the idea that the 2020 census is a modern technology-enabled process that was designed precisely to offer multiple ways to respond. It's never been easier to self-report, which is what we are really, really going to try to push, that idea that it's self-report, self-report, self-report. So I want to say that I'm not saying that we cannot rely on field census survey takers. The Census Bureau is going to do all that they can, but we should definitely be operating under the assumption that that people will need to do the census via the internet, mail, and phone call, and adapting our strategies as things change. We should be planning for this to kind of be the reality, even as sad and kind of scary as that is. We should definitely be thinking long term about how we're going to focus on this organizing, and then also figuring out ways to keep everything focused on the census, as well as going forward on more civic engagement as a whole. Next slide. So the other thing that I've said, and I want to reiterate, is that the NUIFC, the messaging that we've come up with, that I can go over, which was the idea, our two taglines that we sort of settled on was reclaiming our voice, reclaiming our power, and statistically significant as a hashtag. We have really focused and want to continue to focus on pushing the necessity of the census and how those 10 minutes that you spend to complete the census will define the next 10 years of Indian country. While we need to shift to more promoting online, our messaging for our coalition is going to remain the same. We really are going to continue pushing this message that it's a community survey, and that it's a community-based project, that it's something that will put money into your communities, that will support you, so that is your civic duty to get involved, to make sure that we can do it, that make sure that we are counted as the original people of this land. And we will push these ideas through a public service announcement that we are going to be airing shortly on I think 31 different markets around the country through Comcast, as well as another PSA that we're working on with Charter Communications, and our messaging on social media. So as we change how we're sending the message, we want to still remain really focused that our messaging will remain the same. Next one. So beyond using social media and information, we also reported promoting our recently created Census 2020 posters. These posters were created by Jeffrey Vergara. He is a Native American artist. He did a really, really good job. We're really excited about them. And these are kind of the graphics that we were going to be putting up around centers, but we are now going to be adapting this. We are also hoping to work to make sure that these posters, materials, any other literature that we can come up with is going to be constantly available in grocery stores, community centers, clinics, and other essential locations. So while we won't be able to put them up, while our businesses of operations and businesses and whatnot may need to be closed and changed, we can still make sure that these posters, these messaging, all of this sort of stuff remains visible to everyone in whatever capacity we can do that still. Next slide. These are our social media graphics as well, so they're a little bit different than the posters, but still the same idea. We're also really proud of them. So we are now thinking, next slide, please. We are also thinking of outside the box ideas. So many of our centers were planning on using events to promote the census. This is obviously no longer an option. We're considering a variety of different ways to use the census funding that could be successful. This could include phone banking, text banking, social media challenges, and hosting virtual census information and organizing sessions. We are also hoping to touch base with our friends at Asian Americans Advancing Justice to learn more about how to best focus on these different banking options, such as texting and phone banking, and how we can maximize the effectiveness of these programs. And again, we are always looking for more and more ideas about the best way to reach people digitally and the best way to expand our messaging around the census online. Next slide, please. One of the other outside the box ideas is if our cohort member can adjust their budgets, we also encourage physical marketing with posters and billboards like our Oklahoma City Center did. This is a photo from a bus stop as well as a billboard on a main road. We think that this is a really cool idea, a really good way to get the messaging out, and also something that we think even with the COVID-19 changing a lot of our plans, this could still be a really effective way for us to get messaging out there, to be in front, to be seen, especially if we're setting these up in public places like this, and also in community places as well as grocery stores, figuring out ways to expand that as well. Next slide. So we are still in the earliest process of revamping our census strategy. Our plans will adapt as we connect with our centers and the Census Bureau. We have an all cohort meeting of our 40 plus cohorts our 40 plus member centers tomorrow, where we'll be going over all of this information and more about the census, how we're going to best organize around it, how we're going to support one another digitally, and also understanding that a lot of our centers are community centers. They provide resources to the Native community, and that right now those resources are going to be really tested. So we're going to do our best to juggle and support both the census work that we're still focused on, that we're still laser focused on, and also being in a position where we can help our community centers help their communities. So the goal is to maintain clear lines of communication and remain nimble so that we continue to evolve and fix our plans as news comes in. So yeah, that's about all I got. Really appreciate it. Let me know if you guys have any questions.
Thank you so much, Rio. Again, for those folks who are interested or have questions, feel free to write them in the chat, or if you're on the phone, you want to raise your hand. If not, we'll move on to in the slideshow. But again, thank you, Rio, so much for giving us the information. I think that was, I think the biggest thing to take away from that is that the plans are changing, and that we're coming up with ways to think outside the box to not only advertise, but to reach those folks, especially in this time where in-person and large gatherings are not really an option. So. All right, not seeing any questions. Thanks you again, Rio. I'll just go to our next slide here, which is examples from other tribal nations. So the Indian Country Counts, our campaign offered 2 rounds of census mini grants where tribal nations applied for funds to help assist in their 2020 census efforts. What we gathered from the early grantees and applicants was a common theme of their efforts was centered on bringing the community together and extending outreach through merchandise and social media to increase awareness and engagement. So tribal nations use their funds, to buy merchandise with the ICC or census logos to advertise in their communities. They bought supplies for their census and recurring community events, which obviously are on hold at this moment, and then also created informational handouts and ads for distribution online or in person. Below in the photos here, you can see a couple of different tribal organizations. The first one on the left that's the chief of the, or chairperson, I should say, of the Yakima tribe, who actually had a census event in late 2019. This is a photo of him wearing his I Am Yakima and I Count shirt. Next is one of the grantees who's, I always forget their tribal name because they were one of the more recent ones to apply, but they actually used the funds to create their own style, not using ones from Indian Country Counts or the census, where, as you see, it says Native Proud with a black feather followed by Native Count. But the Menominee tribe of New York, they chose to spend some of their funds on purchasing I Am Menominee and I Count shirts. And then finally, the Pueblo of San Felipe actually created notepads and lanyards, as you can see there. They again use their own design, which says 2020 census. I think it's something like I Count, Native Count, I Count, You Count, and then their native language, in their native language, saying that in their tribal name, I should say, in their native language counts as well. So those are just some of the examples that tribal nations have done. Obviously, some of them have had to change their ways or their plans because of the cancellation or the pause in community events and large gatherings. But those are just some examples for folks. And we've heard other ones where things like doing raffles, where it's like a drive-through raffle, like you show that you've completed the census, and then you're entered in a raffle, and then you can win cleaning supplies or something like that. Things that may not be considered a great prize before, but are now considered a great prize. So we've also have a Native Youth Challenge through social media. NCAI has announced a social media challenge for Native youth under the age of 25. We want their help to make Indian country count and be visible in the 2020 census. So as you can see on here, we're asking them to post videos to either TikTok or Instagram talking about why they count using the hashtag #ICountChallenge. And there will actually be prizes given out to the most engaging, inspiring, and viral entrants. So we definitely urge folks to get that out there, especially, gosh knows we're all inside and, can only watch so much TV or listen to so much radio before, we go a little stir crazy. So this might be a great way to think outside the box, have some interesting, indulge in those artistic and entertainment, juices that you got inside of you. And like I said, their prizes are available, including, you know, smartphone, wireless headphones, tablets, and more. So really a lot of cool things that folks can win. So definitely urge to get that out. So our call to action at this time is really, you know, it's time to take action. March 12th began the self-response period, and we really want people to start filling out their census form and helping others to do that as well. With the concerns about the coronavirus, we want to remind folks that they can fill out their form online, by phone, or by mail, all without having anyone else come into your house or knock on your door. The self-response period now lasts until April 14th, so there's plenty of time to continue raising awareness and to empower folks to fill out their form at home. Please use the response map as a way to monitor your community's participation in the census. As I said, you know, there might be some lag, but it's the best way to see how things are doing. And looks like just about every state has hit that 15% threshold. But hey, we want to get the, you know, when you go down the travel track, some of that might not be less, and we want to get those numbers up. And finally, we ask you to please check out the Census Bureau and Indian Country Council websites for more information and useful tools. All right, so we are now in the question phase here. So we would ask for folks who are on the line, you know, please, you know, I'm going to unmute everyone at this time so that way that if they would like to speak, they can. Just we ask you, if you don't have a question, to keep yourself muted, but I'm going to unmute you, or at least on our side of things, so that way folks can speak. And you know, just ask any questions. You know, if you got any comments, hey, if you come up with a great outside the box ideas to get people not only interested but to fill out the census form, we want to hear it, because the more we can share, the merrier. If nobody really wants to speak up, I might just start picking out people randomly. So you know, be prepared for that. And obviously, if you're not on the phone, or you're not able to call in or speak over the phone, you can always write in the question or chat space, and we'll be happy to read it off for you. So this time, I'm going to unmute everybody. And unmute all attendees. Don't know why that's weird. Okay. Well, I'm going to have to manually unmute some people, but either way, you know, feel free to go ahead and speak up now. If you've got any questions, any comments, anything you'd like to say, please let us know.
I'll just have her.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay. I heard somebody talking, but I know they were talking to somebody else. So I think that was Rieta. Is that you?
I'm sorry. Yes, I didn't hit mute.
No, that's okay. I actually unmuted you. Sorry, I was unmuting everybody. I don't know if you heard, but we just wanted to get folks out there to, you know, if they had any questions to ask, anything they'd like to pass on their efforts. So actually, we do have a question here from Joseph Ray, which is any other options for people with disabilities such as Braille? That's a great question, Joseph. To my knowledge, there should be a Braille available, but I actually don't know that off the top of my head. Sandra, if you're on there, do you know that if there's a Braille option?
Hold on, sorry, I was muted. So you can respond online. Basically, they will have a video in American Sign Language available in guide to responding online. They're also going to have Braille and large print guides available to assist with completing the paper questionnaire as well. And then they will also have census takers available who can communicate in American Sign Language if needed.
Okay, good to know. And I'm doing a quick look just to see if there's anything on there, the census form as it relates to that.
And one thing I would mention on the call that is, if anybody has any difficulty with that, please definitely reach out to our team, to Matt and I, and let us assist with that if you need any additional support or assistance. For example, if you're not able to get the print guides or something's going on, let us know, or definitely let your Census Count Coalition leads know so that we can assist in that effort.
Hey, Matt, this is Brian. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Brian. Go ahead.
Hey, so we recently received our community assistance grant at NSU, and obviously the future is unforeseen now. So if I'm getting correctly from the webinar today, we should just look at more creative ways to spend that revenue or that money.
Yes, and we, this is for those on the call who may have received the grant from us previously, we ended up, we just determined we're going to extend the deadline through August. I believe the 7th is the date. I'll double check that, but I believe it's August 7th. And we'll be sending out a letter to folks. But yeah, we want, in the meantime, we're asking folks to try to think of ways maybe outside of maybe their initial applications. I mean, because a lot of folks did talk about having gatherings or having a census event or something to that nature. And we have to obviously understand that we can't do that in this time frame. We don't want to risk anyone's health, especially if it's young children or the elderly or anybody who might have a compromised immune system. We just don't, that's the last thing we want to do. The census is important, but more people's health is more important, obviously. So we want to just, think of different ways. Again, it's all going to depend on the community, how, for example, doing something like a webinar or a go-to meeting, something where you can, talk to people through teleconferencing. That could be a great way to talk to people. The old phone tree, for those who, before the internet age, or probably might remember this, but obviously where, one person calls one person and that person calls two more people or something to that effect, as a way to just kind of get the message out there, get it out so that people are, so that they can basically get that information, and from there that they'll be able to, just find ways to communicate with people. And obviously, if calling people on the phone is a little difficult, the mail service is still working. So it's not to say that it's not working at this time. So sometimes writing an old-fashioned letter might be the easiest way to do that, or putting up an ad or poster or something like that in a communal area, someplace where even in these times, people are still going to have to go to the grocery store to get food. That might be a place where you could put a flyer or something up like that. So obviously someplace where you're, I'm not maintaining that social distancing, but people are going to be able to see it. Like what Rio was talking about, like at a billboard, something like that. If you can, of course, afford it, that's obviously one thing.
So can I add something,
so,
Matt, please?
Yep.
So one of the things that I would also recommend is if you do have capability of virtual, and if any of your communities do have that access, another way to do is some good virtual challenges in your community. Some folks are doing that on their own. There are lots of national virtual challenges. The Census Counts has a virtual challenge. We just mentioned our NCAI Youth TikTok and Instagram challenge, which we really need more participants. Prizes are going to start going out to those that have entered, but we'd love to have a lot more. So please definitely do that challenge. It's also on our Indian Country Counts webpage. We're also looking for more video uploads on our Indian Country Counts webpage as well. So there's a lot of different opportunities for virtual challenges, and that's another way to maybe do. Matt had mentioned that we had somebody on our last regional call that was doing a raffle giveaway, like a drive-up raffle giveaway for those that completed the census. Other people have talked about doing a virtual drive-in, because I know one of the things that they were concerned about most is people that still wanted assistance filling it out, but to stay away from one another, and so they were looking at how do we do like a virtual drive-up census. And so there's a lot of different ideas out there. So definitely, if there's something you want us to help push out that you're doing in your community, if you do decide to do like a virtual challenge, let us know, because we'd love to push that out on our social media and help with that. So those are some other things that you could do.
Yeah, thank you, Chandra. I appreciate that. I think those are all really great ideas, and we're definitely in all the work we're doing. We're trying to figure out how we can do more, virtual oriented things. And so I just wanted to confirm that we could utilize those grant funds to do something like purchase cleaning supplies for a raffle, or we could use those funds to purchase prizes for some kind of a virtual challenge.
So What I would suggest is, in the advice that Matt and I have been given on that, is that all we're asking our grantees to do is to basically just let us know how you're going to re-strategize, so that, yeah, basically, and definitely get creative with it. We recognize it's kind of an odd situation that we're all in, of course, and limiting in some ways, and so we definitely want people to feel that they can get really creative with these ideas. So if there's ever a question, Brian, definitely reach out. But we'll ask in the reporting that you just, talk about, how you did do that, how you re-strategized and decided to do that.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great.
Thank you, Brian, for the question. Is there anybody else? Again, please feel free to write through. I mean, again, and it doesn't have to be a question. Maybe you've got a really clever idea or way to, help get the word out for census while obviously maintaining social distancing and just ensuring that you're keeping your family, friends, everyone safe in your community. I love to say that we know all and we can tell you all, but obviously, you folks know your communities better than us, and we want you to tell us, what ways you're doing things. As I mentioned, we heard from folks who were kind of reutilizing that drive-in movie as a way to, but instead of obviously it's a movie, they're the drive-in raffle sort of thing for cleaning supplies, as I mentioned. Okay, I see Lindsay. Lindsay, you've raised your hand. So Lindsay, you're unmuted. So if you want to go ahead and speak, you can.
Hi, thank you. This is Lindsay McCovey from California Native Vote Project. I was just going to give an update on what we're doing here in California. I know the Southern California team for California Native Vote Project is collaborating with different partners to do a jingle dress live stream on Facebook on April 1st. Additionally to that, we are working with NUNA and California Complete Count to organize a live stream event. We'll check in with different areas within California. We're trying to figure out the logistics to that. So if anybody does know, because we did kind of want to bounce back and forth, but we're trying to figure that out to do an event on Facebook where we can do that as well. Additionally, in Northern California, I'm putting together packets for the schools. Seven schools and 2 Head Start programs will be getting census swag bags, which will consist of bags, toothbrushes, coloring books, color crayons, bookmarks, and additional census material that they can pick up when they get their packets from school or when they get their lunch. So that's what we're doing on our end.
It sounds fantastic. Thank you, Lindsay. And actually, that's what you mentioned about the lunch stuff, sort of things like, that might be a great time. I know it's obviously people are picking up food, maybe thinking about a way to work with maybe some of the local schools or food banks, whomever might be directing those, to just put in a little slip of paper about filling out your census. That could be something, just something, like I said, just kind of thought off the top of my head as Lindsay was speaking there. But there, are a number of ways that we can get the word out while, of course, maintaining social distancing, ensuring that we are keeping everyone's health in mind when we're doing this. And just, I know it's sometimes a little hard. We're all set in our ways, especially when it comes to doing events. I think those can be the best way to do things, but we have to understand that that's not available to us right now. So think it outside the box, as Rio said, about the best way to reach out to folks. Anyone else? Anybody else have, again, either updates, ideas, questions, not only for myself and Sandra, but maybe for our presenters who are still with us right now? All right. I'm going to take everyone's silence as all their questions have been answered. So, Joseph's got his hand raised here. Let's see here. So Joseph, if you want to send it off in the chat box here, I'll be happy to read that off and answer any questions you might have. Oh,
In the meantime, I was going to make a comment as well.
oh yes, go ahead.
So this is Wyatt from UIHI again. We, in talking with some of our partners and some of the work that they're doing, they're also trying to figure out how they're going to continue providing services and information for some of the programs that we have going on here or at their organizations. And so I know there was one place that was thinking about, doing a cooking show or some kind of live stream that, provides that information. And, I think you already mentioned, how can we insert this into some of those opportunities? And so, one idea they had was to have our census flyers, posted behind them while they're working, and then talking about, incorporating information or language in to the show about the importance of the census and an activity that could be done or completed, while you're at home, or involving the family or community in those conversations and talking about how the census is important and relates to kind of you as an individual or family. I'll also say that if there is activities or information or stories that you'd like us to share in these efforts, we're looking for resources and information and stories to share through our newsletter. So we have a newsletter that we're putting out about every couple of weeks. It's called the We Count newsletter. And so we're looking for other things that we can share outside of our campaign as well. So feel free to send those to me or email me, and we can talk about different opportunities of what that could look like.
Well, Wyatt, that sounds fantastic. And definitely we want to make sure that we can share anything and everything that we have, stories, anything great like that. Let's see, Joseph, he wrote the FYI, because elders are influential in my pueblo, sending out info that reminds the people how we need them to be diligent about census. That's great, Joseph, to remind folks. Obviously, elders are, they're looked to in our communities, and we need to make sure that they are diligent on that as well, not only filling it out, but then being those messengers as well. Something I just thought of I apologize, I'm jumping all over the place here, as Wyatt was mentioning. Wyatt talking about obviously doing a cooking show. We all know that, a lot of people have kids home right now, and they're trying to homeschool them, or at least try to do things with them to keep them learning and not just running around the house driving everyone crazy. But this could actually be a great way to teach kids about the census, why it's important, and also, instilling that in them so that 10 years later, when they are maybe living outside their homes, or they're adults of their own, or they might have families of their own, that they are going to be filling out the census, because this is something, the messaging that we, in our message testing, our family, our people, our nations, our future, this is going to be affecting folks for the next 10 years. We're living through some historical times right now with everything that's going on, but we don't want people to forget that, even in this difficult time, we filled out the census. We made sure that we were heard. We made sure that we were represented, and that, as one of the hashtags was statistically significant. I think that was a really great one from Rio. Any other questions, comments, anything anyone would like to add? Oh, and I think some folks heard it, but just in case you joined. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I do. This is Rio again with the NUINFC, and something I've been thinking about in regards to our messaging around the census is, April 1st is still Census Day. I know for us, we were thinking about a lot of different ways to kind of rally around that and kind of promote it. And I've been thinking, that's something we should all be thinking about as a way to kind of coordinate it. You do a coordinated social media campaign on Census Day. And then also, if it's successful, start looking into doing a couple more of social media days of action. You had mentioned even doing, if you can prove that that you completed the census, being entered in a raffle. We could do something with community centers or something like that. Like, if they get the most respondents or something like that, they could be eligible to enter a raffle or something along those lines. But I'm just thinking of the best way for us, digitally, anyway, particularly on social media, to kind of drum up organic support would be just to all coordinatedly do a push of some kind. And that would hopefully increase the reach of whatever campaign we settle on. So just something to think about would be the April 1st Census Day of Action, doing something kind of with that, or creating our own days, creating our own day of action, our own social media day of action.
Great
right
point,
now,
Rio.
just so everyone knows, there is a heavy push for, we were just talking about on our civic engagement call earlier today. Right now there's a lot of civic engagement weeks of action going on leading up to April 1st. And then also, like as Lindsay mentioned, in California, there's a day of action for their California Native Count group. And then we also have, and Rio, I think excellent point is how we can coordinate kind of our days of action together. And is that something that maybe after this, Rio, you'd be willing to work with us on after, and we can kind of coordinate between Wyatt, yourself, and any others that we can email out to? That would be wonderful. I can send out a template for like Twitter, Instagram posts, Facebook posts, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I would absolutely be happy to help with that. We, like I said, we're going to be having our conference call with all of our centers tomorrow, and I'll bring up this idea of doing specifically the Census First Day of Action, and then us also start thinking about how do we make our own days of action. And I'm sure that's something that they'll all be excited about and on board with, and we can kind of go from there with everyone that's in this call as well. Because just a coordinated push together, I think could be really, really powerful, especially since everyone's going to be home. Everyone is monitoring social media right now. So I think that could be something, and be happy to help with. So please just follow up with me.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Rio. Okay, we are well over our hour limit, so unless anybody has anything else, like I said, any comments, questions, concerns, any great ideas they want to throw out there, or just something maybe for us to chew on as we're sitting at home or sitting in our offices thinking about ways to get things out. Speak now or forever hold your peace. I also would just say, as you're thinking about it, we did add a handout here that has the updated operational adjustments that was in one of our slides, the kind of the updated time frames. So that's available for anybody to download from this if they're on the app here, or excuse me, on the GoToMeeting, I should say. And that's also available on the Census website as well. So any final questions? I'm going to suggest no. I did hear somebody typing, so I'm going to mute everybody again just at this point. All right. Well, with that, everyone, just thank you so much for joining us. Again, and I want to especially thank our two presenters here, Rio Fernandez and Wyatt Pickner. Thank you both for taking your time out of your day to join us and to speak about what your organizations are doing and their efforts to get out the word for census, and obviously how you are adjusting with the current times. And we're already excited to be working with you in the future. So again, I just want to thank everybody for joining us. We will be doing these calls as often as we can, definitely giving you the latest update, but we please encourage you to check out our website, which I got to pull up my slide here real quick because and the next slide, here we go. You can check out our website, www.indiancountrycounts.org. You can also email us at census@ncai.org, or you can also follow us on Twitter at NCAI 1944. So just thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We'll be sending out more information as we come up. Please, again, keep an eye out on the Census website as well as Indian Country Counts for more information on this, and keep your eyes open for any and all news, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you so much for joining us.